Hello and welcome to today's episode of Courage Permission Slip. Today, I am so pleased and very excited to welcome in Michael D. McCarty to the show.
Yay.
And I want to tell you a little bit about him before we get started. Michael is a professional storyteller who has been telling stories and teaching storytelling around the world for nearly 30 years. He specializes in stories of African and African American history, as well as multicultural stories. Since 2014, Michael has worked in California prisons as part of the Arts in Corrections program, teaching inmates how to find, develop, and tell their stories. And if all of that wasn't fascinating enough, he was a Black Panther, a United States Army martial arts instructor, and an acupuncturist, and so much more. But Michael is a dear family friend, and I'm so tickled that you are joining us today. So welcome and
Yay.
thank you.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so, I mean, really, I feel like your whole dossier is if we were going to look up courage in the dictionary, your name, your face and your name would be right there, just from the things that I've read. And there's so many other things that I didn't mention. But, I really would love to just kind of start right there in terms of when you think of the word courage, what does it mean to you?
To stand up for what is right, regardless of the consequences.
Mm.
To take a stand, even though it may, in the short term, hinder your life, your life plans.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, you may have some new life plans, but standing up for what you believed in.
Yes. So of course, I know some stories, but I would love to hear, just kind of building on that. And again, how you have just been a profile in courage. How did giving yourself permission to be courageous and to have courage, how did that lead you to where you are right now and what you are doing?
Well, it began with my mom. My mom instilled in me the belief that you should stand up for what you believed in. If you saw something wrong, you had an obligation to do something about it. If you couldn't do anything about it directly, to let somebody know who could. When I was in high school at St. Ignatius in Chicago in the 60s, along with my classmate, your dad, 1966, our sophomore year, I had read Autobiography of Malcolm X, and I discovered all these things about Black history and culture that were not being taught in schools anywhere. So we started a Black student organization at St. Ignatius. And then around the city, other schools were doing likewise, and we were interacting with each other. And then there was the issue of, in terms of St. Ignatius, a white school, predominantly 95% white school in a Black community with absolutely no interaction with that community, no acknowledgement of Black or so-called minority history in world history. So we started speaking up and speaking out, and there were consequences, and that's life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, thinking about that, thinking about the consequences, which you have experienced some, how do you deal with that, right? Like, it's one thing to have the courage to know that you're standing up for what's right and knowing that you are going to experience blowback of some sort. How do you deal with that? How did you deal with that?
Well, in the case of St. Ignatius, we got G.L. Tyler. We were the leaders of the Black student organization at St. Ignatius, and we got kicked out in March of '69, just a couple of months before graduation. And I remember coming home and my mother was in tears because going to St. Ignatius was more than a notion. It cost more to go to St. Ignatius than some of the local colleges. And both
And it's
my
still super expensive, by the way.
oh yeah, super duper expensive now.
Super.
Shoot, yeah. But I remember coming home and my mother was in tears, and my brother decided to fill in for my dad, who was at work gratefully. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here now. And he got ready to kick my butt, and I started talking and talking until he unballed his fist. And eventually, my parents understood that I had done what they taught me to do. And so when we got kicked out, I just kept rolling, intensified my activities and what have you. And I remember coming home one day, and my mother, my mother was born in 1908, my father in 1900, okay? Revolution wasn't on their mind. But I'd grown up in a household where we got Ebony and Jet and Sophia and Negro Digest. So there was this influx of information. And my mother was on the phone defending the Black Panther Party to one of her friends. And I was like, whoa, whoa. And it took me on a different track. My intention was to be a physicist and going to space as an astronaut. So my life took a whole nother track, and I'm grateful to it. I mean, it was hard times, it was challenging times, it was some stupid times, things I did, but all of the things that happened to me in my life have been a benefit in terms of when I became a storyteller, I had stories.
Oh, yes.
I had stories. When I started working in prisons, I had stories that these guys could relate to because I had been on the other side of the law in a variety of ways. And I would share those stories with them, and that gave them permission to share their stories.
Ooh. I love how you worked in permission there. And, so to that point, I'm wondering, because you continue being on the forefront, right? You're telling these really important stories. I think about your documentary and, where are there places where you're noticing where you might still have to give yourself permission to be courageous? Is that happening?
It's constant. I'm in my 70s and I am, how shall I say, I ain't slowing down. I see most stuff to do, and I have a sense of urgency because I know I got less time ahead of me than I do behind me. So my focus is on doing whatever I can to help others who, when I just got an email from someone who was a teacher, a Latina teacher. She wants to know more about the Black Panther Party and the Black Power movement so she can include that in her education. I got a box of books that I'm going to be sending off to her. There's an organization out of Long Beach, a group of young Black folks who, again, are taking up that mantle of activism. So I said, here's my information. I got stuff for you. I have information for you. If I can be of any help, I have books for you. Because I give away books. I give away every year, I give away a few $1,000s worth of books. So I can't wait. Or I see somebody, they're doing something. If I can help them, I can't wait to do so. And whatever it is, a word, sharing a story, just being there for them, whatever it takes.
Yeah. And as you are, you're in conversation, as you said, you're in conversation with young people who are really going to be the next leaders, right? They're the ones that are going to be the next set of difference makers. And you know that there are people who are going to be watching this or listening to this, and they have a vision, they have a goal, they have an idea, they have something that's burning within them. And fear is a little more important right now. Fear is the thing that's in the way. And so, what would you say? What advice do you have for that person who's listening, who has this burning desire to really do something and move forward, but they're not able to? What's your advice to them?
It's taking that step. That's the fear. The fear is taking that next step, because that next step, I mean, the way it's depicted in the tarot card is the Fool, the number one card. It's this guy who seems to be stepping off into oblivion with a smile on his face. And that smile on his face is because he knows, not believes, not hopes, not thinks. He knows when he makes that step, there will be a foothold for him to land in. And that's what you have to believe in. You have to believe so much in where you're going and what you're about to be doing that when people say that's impossible, you can't do that, there's oblivion waiting for you. You say, bring on oblivion. I'm gonna kick its butts too. That's it. That's it. You got to be that divine kind of crazy where, because people, I mean, when I, in my life, when I decided to become a storyteller, my second wife left me. I found out later she told one of her friends, he think he gonna make a living as a storyteller. We gonna starve, I'm out, okay? And I've done okay. I've done okay. In fact, I've done phenomenal. So you have to sometimes ignore those voices around you, but you have to listen to your voice. You have to say, okay, I am going to make this step and I accept the consequences thereof. When we did the walkout at St. Ignatius, we knew that there were possible consequences. We knew that we could be kicked out of school. We knew our parents would not be pleased about that. But we believed in what we were doing. We believed in taking that step. Wouldn't change it for the world. Wouldn't change it for the world.
I love that. And you know, and that carries through today in the conversations that you and I have when you're encouraging me to move forward, and that taking that one step. I think we talked about that just a couple weeks ago, of just like, all it takes is that one step. All it takes is you making a decision to commit to one thing that's in service of the dream, the goal, the vision, the idea that won't leave you alone. And you know, and I told you that's why I'm doing this show, is because it is an idea that has been coming to me for years and years. And I was like, oh, maybe it's not it's not the right time. And there have been people who have told me, oh, you should do that later. You should wait to do that. And I waited, and the idea kept coming to me. And then finally I was like, I need to do something about this, because there is someone out there who has something that they want to do. And there's something that someone who I speak with, they're going to say something that's going to be that thing that that person needs to hear, but they can only hear it from that person. Right. And so, you know, you don't want to leave stuff on the table.
That's right. Put it all out there.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about my work in the prisons is that recently, as you know, I give out these little pop open cards. I give them out to everybody. I started out giving these out in the prisons. And for instance, this one says, I think you're the best. I really do. So I give these cards out. And one of the things that happened in the prisons is that guys would send those cards to their wives, to their girlfriends, to their children, to their mothers and fathers and what have you. And I just found out a few weeks ago, this guy got out. And when he got home, his wife showed him all the cards that he had sent, that she had saved on the wall. And so it provided, now think about this, it surpassed my hope. I hoped that these cards would be useful in a variety of ways, but then it went way beyond what I could have hoped for. Like I said, they send them out, and one time, this is really funny. So one time, this inmate was sending these cards to whoever, somebody in his family outside. All mail that goes out is screened. The guy who screened the mail came to my guy and said, "Where did you get these cards? I want to get them." So here's a inmate and a officer interacting on a positive note because of these little cards.
Yes.
So you take your step. And the beautiful thing for me is that it has exceeded my hopes and dreams for what I am doing. It's because things happen, and it's been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. In fact, once upon a time, one of the guys from one of the prisons sent me one of the cards.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. Full circle moment.
Yes, 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 yes. It's wonderful.
Yes. And quiet is kept. Anyone who is watching and listening to this, and you have been to any of my events, you know I too hand out these cards, and Michael D. McCarty was the inspiration. So your legacy continues.
I'm just preparing to send off to, we're having an NSN virtual conference this year. And at the conference, we always have an auction where people put together little things. And I've just put together 2 packages, each of which contains 2 boxes of the pop open cards. And of course, books and bookmarkers and all kind of stuff.
All the things to keep inspiring people to move forward and take that step. Just one step is all it takes.
Yep.
Well, Michael, as always, I enjoy our conversation so much. I'm always so uplifted and encouraged by you and just by your spirit. And I thank you so much for joining me today. And I know that someone on here is going to want to get in touch with you. So where can people learn more about or connect with you?
My website is havemouthwillrunit.com. That's one way. My email is agriot, AGRIOT @earthlink.net. My office number is 310-677-8099. I still have a landline. Yeah.
Well, that comes in handy in earthquake country.
Yes, it do.
Yes. Well, and I will include all of Michael's information in the show notes so that you can connect and be inspired by him as well beyond this show.
And you can add my doc if you like.
Yes.
Link to my doc.
Yes.
You can add that if you'd like to.
I just want that myself. So, but maybe I'll share it with others. But Michael, thank you again for your time and your brilliance. You are such a blessing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. And you be happy, be silly.
Thank you. Until the next time, everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time.